Welcome into the special CBS42.com podcast. We are approaching the 3-year anniversary of the devastating tornadoes that hit on April 27th, and we kind of wanted to go into those storms a bit. Today we have CBS 42's meteorologist Ted McInerney. Ted, how's it going?
Not too bad. It's crazy to think about what we just talked about. 3 years, and the last 3 years I have done specials, gone back to every community that has been affected, and it's surreal. I've been out in the communities again on this third year, and there's a lot of positive things. There's a lot of negative things, still haunting things that I don't think will go away for a while, especially memories. But it's crazy to think back 3 years ago because it feels like yesterday to me.
Yeah, these last 3 years really have flown by. Let's go back in time, though. You had just joined CBS 42 about 6 weeks prior?
Yeah, it was 6 weeks on the job. That's always a fun thing. Biggest tornado outbreak of our generation. 62 tornadoes in one day and 8 large tornadoes on the ground at one time. And that's a hard thing to do as a meteorologist and broadcast because you get a tornado warning, you got to cover it, and you do a good job covering it. You tell everybody where you need to go, the time where they need to go, but then you start to get a bunch on the ground at the same time, which we had. Just left Tuscaloosa. We saw it. We saw the destruction. At the same time, that tornado was approaching Pleasant Grove, and it killed people, many people along this path. We made the decision to stay on that tornado while there's a tornado on the ground in Walker County, a tornado on the ground in Marion County, and a tornado on the ground in Bibb County. And we had to make the conscious decision to stay on one tornado because of population. It was a rough call. We tried to put the other ones out there. We had a automatic crawl. We had a bug in the corner that had the county warnings, and we just hoped that people were relying on it. We really knew that Birmingham needed it because of the morning storms, and that's the one thing to talk about. That day, setting it up, I don't want to jump ahead of some of the other questions I see ahead of here, but we knew days in advance about this, more so than any other event. A hurricane you can track for days as it approaches, and you can still get it wrong. But you at least know the area where it's going to hit, and people can evacuate. But with a tornado, you can't predict what a tornado is going to do, where it's going to go. But on this day, I remember getting a call from Mark Prater at Saturday night. And he said, "Did you look at the models?" And I said, "I did, but I just thought," because long-range models tend to, we always say, there's a European model, there's a global model, there's a North American model. We always say that model is drunk because it's making erratic. I can tell you that there's probably a model out there right now that says it's going to snow next week in May, and it's wrong. So I went, okay, take it with a grain of salt. It's a long way out, but yeah, that does show a huge tornado outbreak. Diffluent flow, strong low-level jet, temperatures soaring, a negative tilted trough. These are all technical terms, but it was all there. It was textbook. A low developed over Memphis, which is the notorious. When I was in here for 6 weeks, like you said, it was 6 weeks on the job. But training with Mark and Kaylee Dean at the time, Mark always was stressing, now this is going to be a big event because the energy is too far north. Energy is too far south. It's not enough. And it was interesting over those 6 weeks and learning about the climatology of this area, because I knew the Northeast and I knew Buffalo, the Great Lakes I did intensive studies on, and I'd been in the Midwest with ice storms and blizzards and record cold down to 27 below. I've never felt that before. And I went, and I was a part of the Mississippi record floods in 2008. And I was like, I can't be in another area where there's going to be a record event. It can't happen. But I did. But I'm going a little haywire because it was such a crazy couple of weeks, because you have to set it up that I came in here March 14th, 2011, and right out of the gate there was a lot of severe weather events. So I started to learn about the area, and just sitting there waiting and watching storms, that's where I was learning from Mark about the climatology. And setting up, he always said, this is going to be the big one if it happens. And he always compared it to the April 8th, 1998 tornado. And then April 8th, 1998 came up, and I was doing some news reporting, and our producer Tracy Bynum had been working at that night and did extensive coverage of it, and she said, this is a big story. We need to do an anniversary of it. And she got me in touch with Matthew Seals, who was paralyzed by that tornado in Oak Grove. And his 8-year-old son, Nathan, passed away. And she said he had a crazy story. Just you being in this area, you need to talk to him. So I went out and talked to him and he lives in Leeds now. And he described to me what an F5 was like. His experience where he woke up in a street, I think 2 blocks away, and he couldn't get up because he felt like he was pinned, but there was nothing on top of him. And he saw his son, which he knew, and just the feelings, it was overcoming. And he's in a wheelchair, and I really learned a lot about it, and I put that story together and seeing the damage and seeing how significant. I remember one thing that I always pointed out, it was such a big, there's a big catastrophe when the President of the United States comes right afterwards. And at the time, President Clinton came to Birmingham, and I saw the video, and I put together the story, and I realized how big of a deal that tornado was and how much Mark talked about it and other meteorologists in the area talked about it. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. I hope nothing like that happens while I'm here. But, I mean, I'm a meteorologist. I love weather. I love severe weather as long as it doesn't hurt people. And so we had a couple events where we had tornado warnings, a lot of tornado warnings my first couple weeks here. And so I got accustomed to town names, the way the National Weather Service talks in their chat service. And once I started to get that down, I went, there's a lot of overreaction. Like, there's a lot of strong thunderstorms, but there's not a lot of tornadoes. And I started to see that, like, there's going to be a lot of severe weather coverage, but it's not. It's just to be, covering yourself to make sure that nobody gets hurt. And then April 15th happened. And April 15th, there was actually a tornado in Tuscaloosa. And our freelance meteorologist at the time, David Neal, was storm chasing with Skype. And he got, this is a phenomenon. It's not a phenomenon. It's, you don't catch, which I thought you don't do much. You don't catch a tornado forming on television live. And he pointed his GoPro or his whatever camera he had in his car up. And you could see the mesocyclone, which is the initial thunderstorm that produces a thunderstorm, or produces a tornado. So the entire thunderstorm has to rotate before a tornado is born. And you could see the clouds rotating and a funnel cloud pop out. But you don't see it hit the ground. But later, if you go and look at YouTube videos, he was basically in the tornado. And I remember afterwards, Mark, Kaylee, management couldn't believe what we got. It was historic for CBS 42. We got a tornado on television. And Mark, Kaylee, and I and our promotions team went down the next couple of days, and we gave out sandwiches to people who are working and cleaning up. We met, we talked to them about the damage, we surveyed it, and I was like, this is a crazy event. I can't believe I was here for it. I thought that was my crazy event. And then goes to that Saturday before Easter, and Mark and I's conversation about, did you look at the models? And I went, yeah, that's what you talked about. And the tone of Mark's voice was, this is something we need to watch. That is going to be historic. And I had noticed it the night before when I was working on Good Friday for Mark. And then Sunday came around, it was Easter. And Mark and I had another conference call, and Kaylee. And we said, this is bad. We got to start talking about it. But we got to keep it to the point we don't scare people because it's Easter Sunday. We can't ruin a holiday, but we need to get people alert. And I still have a notebook where I write my forecast out in my weather headlines. And on that date, that Sunday, it said, great Easter weather, storms possible Tuesday because there was a threat, significant weather event by Wednesday. And it was there. And then the next headline the next day was, we're in it. So knowing that many days in advance, this Storm Prediction Center having it, it was crazy. And to see it all come together, it was almost surreal. But, that's where it's set up. But the morning storms threw us all for a loop.
So let's get into April 27th. So it's like all your models are now saying it's going to be a significant weather event. You're getting closer and closer to the day. It's still looking that way. It's definitely looking worse and worse. Just describe that morning when you came in on April 27th.
There wasn't really any morning to talk about. I had waited for the model run to come in at 2 a.m. It actually came in at 1:40 and looked through it. Knew it was bad. Set up I already had my weather radio, waiting for that watch to come out. Tornado Watch, and there's a Weather Service chat that makes a ding every time somebody talks in it. And I was laying down, couldn't sleep. Maybe got like 40 minutes of shut-eye, maybe an hour. And I remember just waking up and hearing dings, a lot of dings, and I'm like, oh, I couldn't sleep. And the ding means that people are talking about stuff going on. And then the Tornado Watch came out. And we get a lot of Tornado Watches here, but that was called a PDS, a particularly dangerous situation. So it had a different tone. And then I was laying there like, I need to get sleep for this big day because I have had none. And then our morning meteorologist, Kaylee, was texting help. And I went, I got to check this chat, find out what's going on. And there was a tornado warning for Pickens County immediately. It was 3:40 in the morning. And so I had no sleep. So it was the fastest I've ever shaved, showered, put a suit on, and got into work. And as soon as I walked downstairs, I had a microphone on, and Mark was walking in at the exact same time. And we were on from... She started earlier, probably 3:40 till about 10 a.m., I believe. And that was marathon coverage for me. I thought, again, this topped April 15th. And I actually, this line of storms came up, and it makes sense now, but it was not indicated by the models at all. And right away, we were like, this is great news. As much as there were people that passed away in the morning, there was damage. But whenever you have thunderstorms, it works over the atmosphere. We're like, hopefully this just killed and capped our atmosphere so that afternoon event didn't happen. And the only way that would happen is if the cloud cover from those storms hung around so we couldn't heat up. So all morning when we were kind of wrapping up the damage coverage from the morning storms and the hundreds of thousands of people that were without power, we said as long as the sun doesn't come out, we're good. And afterwards, I think Mark went to his car to try to get some sleep, and Kaylee was tweeting out all the damage reports, and I laid on our studio couch trying to get some shut-eye. And I think the nerves and everything, we went outside, Kaylee and I and our web guy, Chris Mitchell, and we were outside, and literally as we were talking, he was asking how bad is it going to be. The sun came out, and you could feel the humidity, and we went, oh no. And we started to go in, and everybody was talking about the morning. And we started to push the afternoon, and we knew that Mark didn't get any sleep, so we tried to let him get some sleep. And then we had a conference. We kind of met again, and we said, "Oh, okay, it's probably going to happen mid-afternoon." And that's when it did happen. But the Walker County storm went first, and it didn't stop. And it literally was like a ride. You went on it, and one happened, and David Neal was out there again, and he got the Cordova one on camera again, and I thought, you don't top this again. And then we had Tuscaloosa. And I looked at the radar signatures for Cordova, and it's a textbook. It's called a hook echo. It looks like a comma, and inside that comma is the tail end of it, the bottom of it, is the tornado. And so we had two of them. And we confirmed one with video. And then the one was coming toward Tuscaloosa. And I knew just before it was April 15th, like, oh, no, they're going to get hit again. And I started to see the velocity inside it, and it was off the charts. And Mark strategically put people in place for video because he knows this area in and out. And Marlon Price was our photographer, and he was on top of the woods and water overlook of Tuscaloosa with Lee Garner. And I knew Marlon was scared of storms, so it was interesting because he always asked about lightning during live shots. It's very important for a live remote operator. And we started to see the sky, and it looks awful, and we know what's coming. And what was weird is we thought, and we were getting reports, that the tornado was on the ground. And I know Mark will talk about this too. There was reports there was a large tornado on the ground, and we were saying it. Get to shelter, large tornado on the ground. And the radar showed it too. But we literally, on CBS 42 from Marlon's video, witnessed a tornado form, touch down, expand, demolish, and continue on. To the point that the National Weather Service has looked at this video and sees it too. The video was so detailed because it wasn't a tower camera. It wasn't grainy. It wasn't coming in different frames. It was live over a satellite feed where we had some glitches because of the raging storm that was overhead. You think about your satellite provider when you are trying to get your TV show. Same deal as trying to send out. When he zoomed in, it was probably too much for any of us in the studio to take in. Mark had the hardest job because he was on air. But I was doing my job and Kaylee was doing her job. And I remember looking up at the TVR preview bar or what everybody else saw. And I saw it. And I remember looking down at my arm and all my hair stood up. Because that's it. I was like, that's the tornado everybody talks about. Not rain wrap, not at night, clear as day, going through a city. And at 5 o'clock at night, people are on the roadways, people are in restaurants. And there it was. It went through. And the weird thing is, it's a very rare thing that's never been captured. There's a lot of professional, great storm chasers out there. But this had vertical horizontal vortices, I'm sorry. And so literally it had little tiny tornadoes sticking out the side of it, which the National Weather Service here in Birmingham, that's a rarity. They were looking at that, impressed. But then you think about this. Mark just went through this emotional ride with a lot of people, and I know he'll tell you, like, he said a lot of things like, we're going to get you through it, because he knew people. That might be the last thing they heard. And do you want to be told, freak out and scare you, or do you want to be told it's going to be okay and go to the right spot? Because basically you had to sit there and ride out something that, even if you did the right thing, you may not have survived it. So then it's over. And in a newsroom, you got to get the damage. You got to show it, and it's powerful. It's crazy. That was a huge challenge because we had a lot of video of Tuscaloosa and pictures coming in, but we also had a humongous tornado racing toward Birmingham. And I think Mark was overcome with emotion, was doing a great job. I remember seeing the warning come out for Jefferson County, and the cities included were Pleasant Grove, Birmingham. And immediately we started our news coverage. We got to stop. We got to go on to tracking this tornado. It's on the ground. It's not weakening. And we have one on the ground in Mississippi going into Marion County, which was Hackleburg, which was an EF5, the strongest one of the day. And then North Alabama was blowing up at the time too, but that's out of our viewing area. That it was just literally, we just saw a town be demolished, people die, and we had to continue on for hours. It was crazy.
What's going through your head at this moment? Because you have to keep doing your job, and you're staying wall to wall. And like you said, you just saw something what could have very been the last moments of some people's lives. How do you stay focused enough to keep delivering that information to other people?
Well, it was tough because Tuscaloosa, it didn't seem real. It's kind of like a lot of people talked about 9/11. It looked like a movie. I think it took a little bit for people to realize what they saw. But I did know that by people seeing that tornado, they take it real. That they take the warning seriously, I hope. And the thing what got, I think, Kaylee the most and me was David Neal followed the Cordova one and then tried to catch the Tuscaloosa one come up to Birmingham. And he ran into the tornado in Pratt City. And so the tone of his voice was different. You could hear stuff hitting his car. And then he had to go help somebody that was injured. To me, it was real. And then our reporter, Cynthia Gould, was one of the first on the scene. And she has a very professional canter. She has a very good news voice. But I know she's a mom. And all of a sudden, she did a phone report, which are very standard, you know. You hear a news person talk. There was a break in her voice that she had just seen the worst thing, like a mother losing somebody. And that got me. I was at the wall at that point. And she sent it back to me. And I had to send it to somebody else because I don't know how to follow that. But there was a lot of that. And yet you had to continue on and continue doing what I've been trained to do in school, what I've been trained to do here at CBS 42 is warn the people, track the towns, tell them the danger. This is what it has happened. It could happen to you, and this is where you need to go. And you tackled it as much as you could. The pictures, though, on Twitter and Facebook, I mean, there was one that came in through Pratt City that looked like, at the time, big current event was Libya. And I remember Mark saying, this looks like it's the cover of Time magazine from Libya, not Pratt City in West Birmingham. So it was pretty crazy.
How long were you on air total that day?
Went on early in the morning, went through 10 o'clock, I believe. And then we started mid-afternoon. We were doing updates at noon to just kind of like break-ins. But we went afternoon to the end of the 10 o'clock news.
Okay, so storms have passed, and like you were saying, there's tons of damage. You were out in the damage, I think, the next day? Or when was the first one?
Yeah, so then you talk about the point when you're done. And with the coverage, at least, for tracking a tornado. And then changing over to recovery and covering a recovery, and trying to do news reports to let people know where they can help and what happened. I don't think I went. I left, and as I was about to leave because they wanted me to get sleep, and I didn't know that wasn't going to happen. And David Neal came in and showed me a video. I don't want to talk about it, but the video was very traumatizing. A woman died in his arms, and he had video of it. Yeah, I got called to go to Calhoun County the next day at 6 a.m., and the traffic was just, you couldn't move. And it took me like 2.5 hours to get to Calhoun County, which was one of the last, that was actually the Tuscaloosa tornado, the same cell. And it went through Ohatchee and northern Calhoun County. And I couldn't even find the route to get there because all the roads were closed. And I ended up having to pull over in the community of Wellington. It was Wellington in northern Calhoun County, and I met this elderly couple that literally were just coming out of their basement. And I followed up with them the next year, and they're doing well. They built a big storm shelter. But that next day, it went from Calhoun County, where I just covered it. I couldn't believe it. It was that video from April 8th, 1998 in Calhoun County. And then I took that video, brought it back to the station, put it together, and then did a live shot out in Pratt City where it looked even worse, or just the same. And then I went to Tuscaloosa, and then Pleasant Grove, and then Concord, and then Cordova, and even Cahava Heights from the morning. It was endless. And I believe it was about a 14-day marathon until things start to calm down.
One of the things that came from this was about a month later, this story that you did that actually went viral across the country. You were with a woman in Tuscaloosa, I believe, helping how did that happen? What led to you and this woman who was looking for one of her cats?
Okay, I got a couple days off on Monday and Tuesday, my normal days off, and I came in on Wednesday, and I was doing the night side reporting, and I said, this is 3 weeks later. We should do it 3 weeks. It's weird. Talk about 3 weeks later, now we're approaching 3 years later. And I'm like, all right. I met this lady at a VOSA, which is a short anchor read over and soundbite, last week, and she said her house got knocked over. She was at it was a Tide Laundry had set up at University Mall I think it was Tides for Hope or something like that, and you could go and get your laundry done. And that was just the story I was covering, and I met this lady there, and she gave me her number. And I remember one line she told me, and I thought this was the golden story, that another meteorologist in town told me it was on Skyland Boulevard, so I didn't get in my safe place. And then my bedroom wall fell on top of me. And then she had to have Alabama students that were neighbors of her pull her out of the rubble. She had black eyes all over her. She had black eyes, bruises, cuts all over her, and she was doing laundry. She was the nicest lady. And I was like, "Are you okay?" And she showed me her hand. It was all bashed up. She's like, "Yeah, I'm okay. I lost one of my cats." And I just didn't think anything of it. I'm like, it's a cat lady. She's like, I have 3 cats, but I have 2 of them, and I lost one. But I guess I have myself. I have my 2 cats. I'm a lucky lady. God bless. So I thought, all right, 3 weeks later, I should go meet up with her. She could tell me about her story of her house. So I meet her at her house, and I actually got there an hour early. I remember just being on my phone and taking pictures and analyzing the craziness of metal being wrapped around trees. One interesting thing I remember blogging about was a washing machine was ripped out of one of the houses in that neighborhood. But you know how the washing machine has the barrel inside. The barrel inside was up in a tree, but the washing machine was still in the washing room, the laundry room. Like, that's pressure. I mean, that's not wind. That was sucked out of it. And so as a meteorologist, I learned a lot just from that hour beforehand. And then Miss Judy shows up. Extremely nice lady. She gets out of her car and she starts looking for her cat right away. Her house is a slab. And she comes back. I didn't even think about anything. I didn't even roll on her looking for her cat. So I mic her up on a wireless mic, and I wanted her to do a walk and talk about what she did during the tornado. And as we're doing this, I hear a meow. I didn't think anything of it because there was a lot of stray animals. And I look over, and under my tripod, which I wasn't using, was a cat rolling out over, and it looked really ragged. And I'm like, wait, isn't that her cat? And she's talking, she's getting really emotional about what she just went through. I'm like, should I tell her about the cat? And then I tell her about the cat. And she goes, what? No, the cat was over here. I said, no, the cat. And she goes, oh my goodness. And I look in my camera just out of curiosity. I'm like, oh, I better be rolling on this. And I wasn't rolling on the whole interview. I had forgotten. So I hit record, and I capture her, get the cat. And it was an amazing moment. It was like this lady lost everything. She was a nice lady, happy. She was thankful to God that she was alive, but she lost one of her cats. That was the only thing. She got the cat back. She lost her car. She lost her house. She lost all her memories in that house, but she got her cat back. And seeing that over and over, it was remarkable. And it was a good story. I wish I could have done it better because I'm a meteorologist. I know how to shoot and edit. I had to put that together pretty quickly. And I wasn't familiar with the editing system, so some of it just had to get done. And I wasn't familiar with the camera, and it all happened very fast and focusing and hoping that the audio is being picked up, not recording, all that. So I'm like, I wish I could have done it better. But it was a good story. I'm glad I have one heart-lifting story. And I had a guy from high school the next day that I hadn't talked to in years message me on Facebook, hey man, I just saw your story on Yahoo front page. And I look, and it's the first story on the Friday Good Feel story. It was 2 days later, it wasn't. And then I had people saying, hey, I just saw your stuff on CNN. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. It got a little attention. And it was record web hits here. And it nonstop. It was international papers picked it up. Everybody wanted one feel-good story. And it was interesting to see how many people wanted to help this lady. And the cat did all right, but I checked in like a year or two later, and it had passed away, but not from the tornado, just old age. But, the funny thing is, 6 months ago, I got a friend of mine say, hey, your cat story I just saw on Reddit, popular. Like, that story was like 3 years old, and it was viral again. And she was on the cover of Paw Nation.
The cat magazine?
Yes. And Parade magazine, they picked it up. Huffington Post, USA Today, every radio show that next morning, nationwide, I think, pretty much had it. It was the viral feel-good story. And, as much as that was a feel-good story, though, the house next door had a missing person sign on it. So it puts things into relative. I mean, you get one good feel-good story, but 53 people died in Tuscaloosa. So where do you move forward from this? We haven't had much severe weather. But that day, I don't mess around. I know how to cover it. I know now that everybody puts April 27th as a measuring tool. So, hey, there's tornado threat Friday. Hey, it's going to be April 27th. No, it's not going to be April 27th. But Jim Stefkovich, who is the meteorologist in charge at the National Weather Service, has a great line that he says during tornado safety when that question's asked. And I'm going to steal it from him. An EF5 is 200 miles an hour or greater. Who cares about the winds? We learned from April 8th, 1998, and in Hackleburg and in Tuscaloosa. There's suction power, too. That rips concrete out of the ground. It rips bark off of trees. And then that's just kind of an engineering. You can't look at a tornado and say that's an EF4. It's based on damage. So then you go down the line and you go EF4, EF3, EF2, EF1, EF0. And EF0 can knock a tree over, can knock your roof off. So Jim says all it takes is one tornado to make it your April 27th. So don't freak out about a massive tornado outbreak. If there's a tornado warning, you seek shelter.
Before we let you go, are there any tips? Obviously, like you just said, is there anything else you want to tell people on just how to always stay prepared for a tornado that could strike at any time?
Well, I know that one interesting thing is that there's a lot of tornado warnings around here. And it becomes almost like a lot of weather talks happen afterwards with social scientists. You know when you're driving your car, there's a four-way stop sign, you should stop because it's against the law and there might be a car coming. But if it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and you know that there's nobody around, there's no police officer, you can cruise through it. So there's a tornado warning. You decide, like it's a stop sign, I'm going to blow through it because you know what? Most of the time I do it. I'm safe. But there's that one time that you'll get a ticket or you'll get T-boned. So there's a tornado warning. You go into your interior closet, your bathroom, you cover your heads, you go into a basement or a storm shelter, and you wait it out. You're in a mobile home, you get out. And the one big thing you've been hearing a lot about is weather radios. The next event we had was January 23rd in the middle of the night in 2012. Weather radios wake you up in the middle of the night, and then you go to the TV, go to the radio, go to your social media, and you find out what's going on. You have the outdoor weather sirens. They're not going to wake you up at night. They're outdoor weather sirens. Not even weather. It's for hazmat issues, civil emergencies. You're on the baseball diamond, you're in the parking lot. The siren goes off. It means go get more information. The weather radio alarm goes off. It means turn it on to find out what the warning is and what to do, and then turn on TV to find out more. So if you have those things, you're covered from outside and inside. And then once you do that, don't let it pass. I mean, I always tell kids, 45 minutes is on average is the tornado warning line. And a lot of the times they expire or they're canceled. So you're in a bathroom, you're in your basement for 30 minutes to 40 minutes. You have smartphones. Just wait it out. What's the risk? What's the risk of going outside and ignoring it? You just think about the people that were hearing the sirens, or maybe there wasn't sirens, but there was radio coverage in Tuscaloosa or Pratt City, and they were driving along in Marion County. There was cars thrown 700 yards off the road. It followed the road and picked cars up and threw it. So if you just decide to ignore the warning, I'm not saying these people did, but if you ignore the warning, you can be caught. If you ignore the warning and you're lucky, you're fine. But again, there's going to be tornado warnings that don't get verified. You're in the South. They happen.
Ted, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Obviously, we can catch you on CBS 42 and CBS42.com, but if somebody wanted to follow you on Twitter or Facebook, how would they find you?
On Facebook, it's Teddy Mac Weather. I post videos and updates there, but Twitter is more of the – I wouldn't do much severe weather stuff on Facebook. Twitter is more active. You know it's not out of date, and so during a severe weather event, you want to follow at Ted McInerney or at CBS42 because during a warning, you'll get the warning, where to go, and updates and thoughts on severity And I think that's the better way to look. Facebook is good to kind of catch your daily forecast and outlooks, but follow Twitter at CBS42 for those updates.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ted. And stick around on CBS42.com. We'll have plenty more April 27th coverage all week long. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.